Good morning, and thank you all for joining us. I'm Hiba, the Civil Rights Coordinator with the Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, the nation's largest Muslim rights civil rights advocacy organization. Today, CAIR is formally designating Stanford University as a hostile campus for Muslim, Palestinian, and pro-Palestine students and faculty. Since October 7th, 2023, students and faculty at Stanford who have stood up against the genocide in Gaza and in support of Palestinian human rights have faced harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. Stanford's administration has enabled a climate of fear and intimidation by failing to protect these members of its community. Our findings reveal a disturbing pattern: biased disciplinary actions, surveillance of student activists, and a systemic failure to protect those advocating for Palestinian rights. We'll present these compelling evidence supporting this designation today. You'll hear from Jeffrey Wang, CAIR-SFBA Civil Rights Managing Attorney, who will provide more insight on our decision. We will also hear firsthand accounts from Iman, a researcher at Stanford, and Urman, a third-year Stanford student majoring in urban studies, who will share their experiences with this hostile environment. Each speaker will come to the podium, introduce themselves, and spell their names before delivering their remarks. Following their presentations, we will open the floor to questions from press. We will begin now with our first speaker, Jeffrey Wang.
Good morning. Jeffrey Wang, Jeffrey-Wang. I'm the Civil Rights Managing Attorney here at CAIR San Francisco Bay Area. As my colleague mentioned, the Council on American Islamic Relations has designated Stanford University as a hostile campus because of its hostility towards students, scholars, and faculty who engaged in pro-Palestinian and anti-genocide activism. For context, in August 2024, CAIR launched its Unhostile Campus campaign, a project aimed at fostering campus environments where Palestinian, Muslim, Arab, and other students and faculty who oppose the genocide in Gaza can do so without being subjected to retaliation or discipline for their views. CAIR has since designated many institutions across the country as hostile because they have created dangerous environments and suppress the speech of those who support Palestinian human rights or oppose genocide. Stanford University is the latest institution to earn this designation because it too has demonstrated a pattern of hostility towards Palestinian, Muslim, Arab, and other members of its school community who opposed the genocide in Gaza. For example, while Stanford claims to be committed to upholding free speech rights and freedom of expression, it has also repeatedly subjected students who protested the genocide to harsh disciplinary measures, including suspension and the threat of expulsion. When the university updated its free speech policies, it imposed rules that could further limit discourse around Palestine and chill student activism. Stanford University also reportedly suspended a lecturer who led classroom discussions on Palestine. And finally, after the Trump administration's recent executive order threatening to deport international students involved in anti-genocide protests, Stanford University reportedly failed to provide assurances or protections for its affected students. Unfortunately, Stanford University's actions are consistent with a larger trend of universities across the country suppressing pro-Palestinian and anti-genocide advocacy. A 2024 CAIR California survey of Muslim college students found that 74% of Muslim students reported harassment or discrimination at school for supporting Palestine, and 61% of students felt like their schools treated discussions about this topic with hostility. Our designation of Stanford University as a hostile campus today is therefore about holding the institution accountable to its purported commitment to freedom of expression, so that students and staff who speak out against genocide are protected and treated fairly. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Iman, spelled E-M-A-N, and I am a clinical researcher at Stanford, where I've worked for the past 3 years. As a child, Stanford was my family's dream school for me, as it is for many immigrant families. When I was offered a position here, my mother shared an old tradition with me. If you hide your child's umbilical cord at the school you want them to attend, they will one day be a part of that institution. Consequently, my mother hid mine at Stanford. On my first day, I was in awe of the innovations in stem cell therapy for leukemia patients and the commitment to social justice through the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in the pediatric department. I believed in Stanford Medicine's message that health is a human right. I believed that they were serving humanity. That belief was shattered last October when the genocide in Palestine began. While my phone filled with images of Gazan hospitals dismantled, children mutilated under the rubble, and the rising death toll, my corner of Stanford Medicine remained silent. Our inboxes were flooded with emails condemning October 7th, yet there was no acknowledgement of the mass destruction in Gaza. This silence felt like a knife to the gut, making it painfully clear that to institutions like Stanford, health is a human right only for a privileged few, not for people like me. I refused to remain helpless. I channeled my anger into action, joining the Stanford sit-in to stop genocide. This sit-in changed my life. I went from fearing doxing and hiding behind masks to speaking out openly, joining the Palestinian youth movement, and organizing alongside other students. In the wake of the destruction of Kamal Adwan Hospital and the arrest of its lead doctor, our Stanford Med for Palestine group organized a pop-up clinic in front of Li Ka-shing Center, an area that had historically been designated for free speech. The day before our clinic, Stanford removed this area from the free speech zone, forcing us to relocate and threatening us with arrest. One of our medical students was even threatened with suspension for refusing to walk away. During these actions, I have faced relentless harassments. At a counter-protest at Stanford, a Zionist saw my hijab and the words "from the river to the sea" on my shirt. He asked me how it felt to sympathize with terrorists, then looked me in the eyes and said, "Oh, that makes sense. You are a terrorist." This level of hatred shattered me. I have watched my peers face similar abuse. Despite multiple harassment reports from our group, Stanford has taken no action, even when a student was hit by a car simply for wearing a shirt with Arabic script saying Damascus. This hostile climate has profoundly impacted my work and well-being. I came to Stanford to advance human health, but I am constantly reminded that my humanity is conditional. I navigate my research while fearing for the safety, wondering whether my voice will ever be heard. Stanford's indifference to the harassment we face sends a chilling message that Muslim, Palestinian, and pro-Palestine students do not deserve the same protection as others. I call on Stanford to take concrete action to protect and support all students, regardless of their identity or their beliefs. Specifically, we demand clear and consistent condemnation of violence and oppression against all communities, including Palestinians, the reinstatement of free speech zones without arbitrary removal to silence dissenting voices, and an institutional commitment to safeguarding the academic freedom and safety of Palestinian, Muslim, and pro-Palestine students and faculty. I am here because I believe health is a human right for everyone. Silence in the face of genocide is complicity, and I refuse to be complicit. Our voices will not be silenced, and our humanity will not be erased. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Herman Rafael Gonzalez. That is GERMAN-RAFAEL-GONZALEZ. I'm a student from Stanford University. Currently in my third year, majoring in urban studies with a minor in mathematics and Spanish. I would like to begin by extending thanks to the Council on American-Islamic Relations for inviting me today and for allowing me to speak briefly on my experiences facing institutional repression due to my allyship with the Palestinian struggle for self-determination and my desire to end Islamophobia worldwide. Towards the end of my second year at Stanford, as a result of aligning myself in protest with Palestine, I faced an involuntary suspension. This also involved me being banned from campus for an extended period of time, and the confiscation of many of my personal belongings, including necessary medications I take every single day. I was banned from campus. I had my medication stolen from me by the university. I was effectively unhoused, and I was taken from the communities that I had spent the last 2 years in. I was not allowed to complete coursework for the quarter I was then enrolled in, and I was also not allowed access to any of my university transcripts, preventing me from applying to many jobs. I bring up that last point to share that I was living and sustaining myself for an extended period of time through mutual aid and the support from the community. As my family is impoverished, I am a first-generation low-income student, and I was living in the Bay Area at the time away from them. I am eternally grateful for the people that supported me and saved me from being unhoused. However, students should never face the risk of being houseless for engaging in any form of protest. The fact that I was suspended without due process was ironic. For a university that has spent every day of this genocide begging their students to allow due process to take its course when it comes to divestment, it was evident that they are more than willing to suspend due process when it came to students who supported said divestment. And it is because the issue at hand is Palestine. In 1989, at Stanford University, there was a violent occupation of the president's office, where 55 students were arrested. Clashes with police officers and protesters occurred, and extensive damage was done to the campus. The 55 students arrested were cited, detained, and allowed to walk free the exact same day, with housing secured and being allowed to continue in school. No interim suspensions, no risk of being unhoused. There are many instances of students protesting across Stanford's history. Violent protests, occupations of multiple buildings, sometimes spanning days or even weeks. Not one student has faced repression the way that pro-Palestinian protesters have, with interim suspensions and threats from the university for engaging in peaceful protests. Once again, when it comes to Palestine, Stanford suspends due process. In fact, last year, Stanford removed from their website their statement of investment responsibility that states that the Board of Trustees recognizes that Stanford must divest funds from companies through their actions or inactions who commit or support the crimes of apartheid and genocide. Yet while dozens of human rights organizations have found that the state of Israel is committing the crime of apartheid against the Palestinian people, while the International Court of Justice has stated that Israel is committing apartheid, while many more human rights organizations have found that the genocide in Gaza is indeed a genocide, while arrest warrants are out for the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu under order by the International Criminal Court, and while there is an open investigation into the crime of genocide committed by the State of Israel in the International Court of Justice, Stanford has seen it fit to hide their investments, persecute students in a way completely unprecedented in the university's history, and take zero action to protect their Arab and Muslim students while the whole world witnesses a genocide. The designation of Stanford as a hostile campus by the Council on American Islamic Relations is completely justified. Stanford is openly hostile to people who are allied with the Palestinian fight for self-determination. Students are afraid to even hang a Palestinian flag out the window of their dorm rooms, to attend protests, to speak about Palestine in class, to wear keffiyehs in class or while out and about at the cafe for fear of repression and suspension. While our encampment was up, students were scared of even interacting with this peaceful sit-in because of the threat of suspension. Dorms were threatened with a group accountability process which could have included suspension of the housing of the dorm and the house if they brought snacks to the protesters. Prospective first years visiting during Advent weekend told me personally that they were scared of going to this peaceful protest because they had heard they were at risk of losing their admission to Stanford. Even now, I confess that I am in fear of the repression that I may get from the university simply by being here and delivering this statement. This is not normal. This is wholly unprecedented in the history of social justice movements at Stanford and is indicative of a university that to its core is hostile to those who would condemn the genocide of Palestinians. May we see freedom for Palestinians in their ancestral homeland in our lifetime. And as a message to Stanford University, President Levin, Provost Martinez, and all in administration that have continued to uphold the systems that uniquely punish pro-Palestinian individuals, we will continue fighting at the university level for divestment and for justice for Palestine. That will not end, and the student movement will continue strong. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. So we will now open the floor if there are any questions.
For either one of the students, is this the school that it sounds like it's not the school that you've always dreamed of going to. Are there hopes that you can find that once again at Stanford?
Would you prefer that we go to the mic?
Please, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I feel in this last year that I frankly lost all hope in Stanford as an institution. I grew up in a very low-income family. I come from a working-class community. I'm from Watsonville, California, where the majority of the work that my family and I would engage in was in construction. I dreamed of going to a place like Stanford because of the job opportunities that I would get for myself. I dreamed of being my family's retirement plan and being suspended, losing my summer opportunity. I was going to study abroad in Chile, losing the work and money that I was going to get from that I always send back home to my family. It was heartbreaking, and it really did make me lose faith in the university as an institution. However, I found great people like Iman. I found so many amazing friends at Stanford who are like-minded and who recognize the horrible nature of these actions that the university is committing. And so I find hope and solace and care and happiness in the people, but as an institution, I think we'll just have to do our best to push them towards divestment and towards a more just university.
Has there been any communication with the university on your all's part that you've gotten a response to your concerns?
So actually I was a part of the Stanford, or the 120-day sit-in to stop genocide at Stanford, and I was also part of the second encampment. And so during the first sit-in, we did have some meetings with administration regarding our demands. If you want, I can state those demands. I think one of them was calling for a ceasefire in Gaza during the time, and then it was also on boycott, divestment, and sanction, as well as institutional divestment. But so during these times, we did have meetings with the administration, but it was very specific people. So they didn't open it up as a town hall. It was like maybe 5 people within the sit-in that was able to have maybe a 1-hour meeting. And even they also had meetings with just Palestinian students who were affected. And nothing came out of those meetings, not even a statement regarding a ceasefire, even though by word of mouth they said, okay, we will do these, but they never followed up, and there was never any type of follow-up meeting. Once the sit-in was over, they stopped meeting with us, and they just started being stricter on their repression towards students.
Do you think declaring Stanford as a hostile campus will make a difference? Do you think they will understand the problems that they're causing, as you say?
Yeah, I believe so. I think we've kind of done many different routes to calls or to talk to Stanford. Again, the sit-in, and then having those meetings with not only the president, but also the vice provost. We did have a divestment proposal that we used we went all the steps. And then during the meeting that they had to address the divestment proposal, they quickly turned down the divestment, or they turned it down without any word or any explanation as to why they did that. So I think, we have to exhaust all arenas, and one of the arenas is labeling them as a hostile environment. What they're doing to students and researchers like me and Arman is not excusable. So this is an arena that we are willing to go through.
Is this unprecedented on CAIR's behalf to, designate a university as a hostile campus? And what does that mean in a nutshell?
No, it's not unprecedented. I believe our organization has designated maybe approximately 15 to 17 institutions across the country now. What this means, the purpose is twofold. One is we are putting these institutions on notice, right? We are aware of their failures to protect anti-genocide students, or not even students, faculty, school community members who are speaking out against the genocide. The second part is it's a warning to students, faculty, staff who care about these issues, right? That these institutions maybe are problematic, and so be advised, be aware of what's happening.
I have one. But for the students, what does your education look like today? What is, compared to a few months ago when you guys were protesting, being able to express yourself, what does it look like today?
Yeah. Well, I'd note that a few months ago I actually was not enrolled in school. I was placed on an interim suspension, and that was done without going through the typical disciplinary process. So I was placed on suspension, and the university, I would say, dragged their feet throughout that process so that the actual disciplinary hearing and the conclusion of the disciplinary hearing was when the interim suspension was going to end, and then afterwards, whatever result comes from the hearing is what would take hold. I was placed on interim suspension. They dragged their feet throughout the whole summer and well into the fall quarter so that we weren't able to enroll for the fall. So I was effectively suspended for the summer and also the fall quarters. So I didn't really have an education a few months ago, but compared to last year, you can feel the fear in the air. I feel like a lot of students are more scared than ever to speak about Palestine, to speak about many of these issues that they're facing, like with immigration rights currently and the removal of DEI programs around the country. A lot of people are still really, really scared, especially because I think President Levin has made a clear policy of institutional neutrality, which frankly, in a country as Islamophobic as the United States and as racist and xenophobic as the United States, neutrality often means supporting Islamophobia, supporting misogyny, sexism, racism. And I think that Stanford is doing just that. So I feel as if it's more prevalent than ever, those forms of bigotry and discrimination. And I think people are more scared than ever to talk about it. You feel it in class. You really do.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Any last questions before we end for the day? All right. Thank you guys so much for coming out.